Yeah.
Are you serious? She's so cool.
Where's Ram Prasad? Alright.
Alright, we're starting.
Everyone good?
Yep.
Yeah. Alright. Go on, hang on.
Ethics and politics are broken. They only pay attention to the realities that fit within the coherence of their feet, but the important moments are the ones that fall outside of the frame of coherence. This is the real Kolozova 09. The real trauma thrust and signification as sheer experience is an uncontrollable incursion of overwhelming real into what makes sense. The real is an effect or trauma discourses that instills or normality exerts powers lived in trauma that assume through the act of violence and the active discourse and situating itself as power that itself is traumatic. This gives us two options. We can either refuse reception to the real or engage in it. There's no option that makes everything comprehensible. There are moments that exceed the possibility of philosophical understanding. There's nothing that forces us to be responsive to the real, but it's impossible to make an ethical claim after our responses. A point is binding this ethical theory that fails to account for their own inexplicably account for moments where something is meaningless and inconsistent with the experience outweighs the necessary sense it fails to account for human life. Definitely might be talking about robots. The point is, I think by representation, our frameworks account for the world as theory is not the world itself. Oh, there's always gaps in the situation interpreted and theory tries to address which causes the incorrect use of that theory outweighs it, because even if they are the correct transcendent interpretation of the world, they can't mirror that in the real world. Now, the solution is the refusal of the necessity of self-making to align ourselves with the real. This necessitates a rejection of philosophy as an explanation for why we act. The affirmative calls us to limit the response to the real, while that of the coherence calls over too. Symptoms of the real manifest as trauma and experience of physically non-philosophical procedure established as a determination concept that affected by imminence of the real. It is a description of the impact of the real and of trauma that disrupts the signification. The limited immediacy that transposes the transcendental as linguistic mediation, and thus the standard role of Bad's receptivity to the real in terms of insurrection of the victim. The capacity to be victimized is what makes human distinct from the object. Object not express that they are a victim, expressing that you're a victim is key to say something and happen to you that the event hurt you. This is assertion of victimhood, it is an assertion of humanity. Laurel 15. It is the victim who determines in the instance of heavy transformation and defense of work. It is not the individual victims and humans as they are capable of being victimized. The victim has knowledge of not to be defeated, but must actualize it. The identity of the executioner is of a different nature. Never victimized, never actualizing knowledge of being victims, must possess and proper defeated, and prefer the standard independently. One, blackness is the position of the world. There is still the possibility of black lives as a dominant placing anything to be disrupted the world. It reveals the world is not totally able to prefigure the world, since the world can always fall outside the coherence. Dulles 15. The world is not always there. The one who comes under the world indexing life and enforcing because of danger to order. Counter common sociality rebels against ontological establishment of the world. The ontology of the world never exhausts the capacity of life to think about the uncommon is true from the primacy of world's life to come under the world. It carries the force as a stranger of the world. The world is vigilant, anti-blackness, question of remaining whether blackness has the power to unilateralize the world. Second, revolution building modes of thought that are not receptive to the real prevent any political action. Calls over 3. The only way to revolt is the non-objective revolt, imminent when it comes to determined life, not a transcendent decision. Purchasers of Istanbul were faced with the formulation of political goals to create philosophical only then the participate in political agenda that was not philosophical but concrete demands dictated by experience reality. In order to clarify the stakes of the rebellion, we pose a problem of outside philosophical habits. Third, it's most educational. Other practices are idealism. Call 15. In education and evolution of new practices non-philosophy aligned with the school can be reinvented, remove blend conditioning, then repaired with critical thinking. Non-philosophy stands outside non-normative practice thinking through problem offense. The war of poverty is history, but the realities that started are not conservative. Antagonism towards big government has directed us away from affirmative explained by the face of poverty. Framing the poor subject to government mismanagement rather than directly understanding them as victims to prevent it from becoming truly aware and responsible to the root cause of war on poverty's failure. Jury 12. The poor were invisible to the Americans because they lived in isolation. Once they became aware, the Americans should be ashamed of policies adopted as war on poverty, reducing poverty. But attitudes we can't begin in life in the 70s. Conservative pundits began their assault on the government programs that anti-government bullying the victim incentive contributed to skepticism. The poor as a real traffic difficult conditions on their own making until these fact statements until stern action on America will the other America will exist. And it wasn't always this way. This is a necessity lived among the poor allowed for the possibility of being responsible to the reality of poverty until it was de-radicalized by conservative opposition. Vast 13. This obligation was volunteers lived upon the end and people served as volunteers maintained to be by stipends barred from another dumpy. Rational the volunteers would gain a fuller appreciation of the awareness from the problems encountered by community members. Thus he planned resolved. The United States federal government will make national service compulsory under the original volunteers in service of America. VISTA program as it was originally proposed in 1964. I defend fines as repercussions. Plan makes it compulsory for individuals to work in 4 communities a year, either before or during collegiate education, working the victims of poverty. Monaco at Al 17. The next generation of Americans are surrounded by peers who master ideologies, economic senses, religion, ethnicities, race. A year of national service will bridge the deep division between society, allowing students to spend a year alongside people with different academic backgrounds through VISTA. Vote after the embrace of VISTA as once was forced communities of open and core communities. It brings the real to life. Compulsory service. Compulsory service is key to enforce that individuals to be receptive to the real as political structures and classified. VISTA arbitrarily will win past 75. VISTA cannot lose sight of the goal, enabling participation in full community, love the redistribution power. VISTA must accept controversy. The volunteer is involved in a direct encounter with the poor. VISTA volunteers strive for the deepest involvement in which people are serving. And VISTA goes beyond socioeconomic barriers to help white people realize how their own privilege operates in communities, which shatters white supremacy's ability to hide itself. Even conservatives fear VISTA's power. Tapson 13, a rabid white supremacist explains his outrage with VISTA. VISTA volunteers serving a racially diverse community is part of that. Includes white volunteers understanding the degree to which they have been privileged by the color of their skin. White people can explain how I ignore privilege, not only of a kind of privilege for your community, also distributed among family, community members, and students you work with. There are 2 additional benefits to this. 1, white ignorance. There's an epidemic gap between white experience and black experience, which causes white ignorance and notions, social structures, prevents radical action, plan responses by forcing all people to experience values, fund institution, and marginalized. Spills of some. The white ignorance of links to white supremacy implies that ignored racial coordination, mapping it, Islam ignored is preliminary curriculum related to Islam through genuine knowledge. The picture of society is inclusive, brings racism and anomalies, white ignorance, underlies asymmetries between white and black men, black and white is not linked by reciprocal ignorance, but rather privilege and subordination produces self-misrepresentation, Khattak misrepresentation. And second, survival strategy, radical politics ignores actual victims because they only see victims theorized and able to complete overthrow the state. That theoretical fantasy victim had absent victims experience the real localized way would be impossible. No advance of frontiers. Exceed such constructions to overthrow the state. What we need to pay attention to experiences since the only possibility to have radical politics. Larwell 2. Intellectuals position themselves alongside the state. They lead victims to strong people reversing situation when they criticize the state. There's often because the victims see the forcing people subverting order. But this question awakening prior first defense of the victim. Language corrupted by politicians and intellectuals.
Okay, is everyone good?
Yep.
Explain the framework at the top. What is the real?
So
Is this psychoanalytic theory?
What?
Is this psychoanalytic theory or different, like a different?
No, this is
Okay.
not. This is not Lacan.
Okay.
This is basically our understanding of the real is basically as that which exists outside of the zones of intelligibility of signifiers. So, for example, like theories like Dulles, right, say that we are all based on affect. There's some inherent condition of individuals, some instability. However, there's always a possibility that the real world can interrupt those understandings. That the real world can interrupt how those signifiers produce identity and how they construct identity. So, for example, an instance of the real could be an instance of sheer trauma, or it could be an instance of overwhelming love for another person,
Okay.
right?
All right, wait. Why aren't those things affective?
Those things are not affective, right? Because there are still things
Sheer
like
trauma,
outside of the
overwhelming
zone of
love?
intelligibility. What?
How are those things not affective?
Well, because the idea of affect is that our emotion can still merit things, or our emotion can signify.
Yeah, those are
certain
you said
outside-
overwhelming love and like terror.
Yeah, so our emotion, so the base premise of that is that our emotion signifies the merit of those things, right? But there are still aspects of the real that cannot be signified in the first place. That is what the real is.
Okay, sure. If the one issue defensive policy action that was implemented in the past, how are the consequences still something that is based in the real? It seems that experience proved that those. things
The
happen.
affirmative is not contingent on consequences.
Okay, so what does the affirmative mean? What do you do?
The affirmative is just a method through which we expose people to the real. So, for example, VISTA requires that people live in poor communities and live on the income of poor individuals. That is itself an exposure to the real, something that has been subjugated and is outside of our current political ideology of the United States, in which we just view the poor as the other America, right?
Okay, sure. So what prevents individuals from entering into these communities, being like, oh man, being poor sucks, and then when they go back to their homes, everything like they just.
So that whole idea of tourism and whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's the exact opposite of what this affirmative is, right? The app is not just people
Well, no, I want evidence that indicates that won't happen.
Okay, no, the app is not that people will go into these communities, take a few Instagram pictures and go away, right? The app requires that people impoverish themselves, right? The app requires that people give up their prior life and actually live with poor communities. So for example, let me tell you this specific part. The Past 75 card is very clear about how it requires full-on participation in poor communities as a poor community member, right? That is 100% immersion in the real, right?
Okay, wait, no, that just indicates how your plan operates. I want to know what prevents people from not seeping back into their privilege.
So that seems to presuppose that the app is relevant on its consequence. The whole idea of the real is that once we are exposed to it, we are uncertain about what will happen in consequence because the real itself falls outside of the lens.
So
of
exposure to the
intelligibility.
real is the only thing that matters, even if exposure to the real does nothing.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we do not know what will happen as a consequence.
How do I leverage things like
The real is itself unintelligible.
How do I leverage things like disadds or counterclaims against the 1AC if you don't defend the effect of your theory?
Because obviously, I just button a framework, dude. It's just a framework that excludes your impacts. You can read a counter framework.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
The 1AC defends like a theory of embracing an experience, not necessarily like a materialist view.
What do you mean by materialist view? That question seems to be overly philosophical, right? We are not trying to ingrain a certain meaning on the real, right? So we do not embrace the need for the real towards one specific end, right? We just say that the real is itself something that falls outside of the like lens of what can be signified, and that is something that we should be exposed to. That is a necessary or essential feature of ethics. So like, well,
Alright, this is about 130 remaining. Order will be 3 off case.
okay.
Setting it out now.
Yeah. How long are they? How long are they?
Sorry?
Oh, never mind.
Actually, wait, hold on. Zoom back real quick. Wait.
You want to borrow my camera?
No. Okay. One, two. Three. Okay. Oh. It's not letting me reply all for some reason. Okay, no, I got it.
Sounds like
Okay, let me know when everyone has it. Okay, is everyone good? A is the interpretation of the affirmative debater defends that a paragraph shows opposite the affidavit must give the plan text for the plan. When asked before the B is the violation, I asked you for the plan text when we flipped, you said new aff, even though I asked for the plan text. See, understand what is predictably aff is a minute portion of doesn't the topical aff in literature, but they get to cherry pick that part that flows easily aff and include topical discipline forming their plan. Naturally, because it's entire aff is contingent on a framework which indicates that I don't have the ability to use generic ground, which gives them a massive preparation of energy kills, parents force them to disclose or tell me the opposite means that I get 4 minutes total. Naturally, because I had to figure out flight information, which I had literally zero time to prep even generics. Also, key to education is I have to be able to predict your position in order to effectively engage. Also, controls nature link to plans, the goods, design, share, and in-depth discussion of the issues that you bring to the table. What are one is fairness, such straight by the bow, which tells you to go for the whoever did the better being. But you can't determine that they're disputing against someone. Second is education. The constituent activity is education. Schools fund participation on the basis of education. So it's necessary to take this at all. Drop the divisions A there. Abuse irreparably screw your evaluation of better self debate. So drop the debater, come take more time. Also B. Drop the debater. Drop the argument after advocacy. So letting them keep going. B and advocacy. When we told my speech, I'm in feeds. The abuse. I can't predict that. He's the favorite theory. Is competing interpretation. Any brother feasibility opportunity. Forced intervention. Also, only minimization makes sense. And B. Foster ways to proactively. Better norms to be no RPI. A. It's strategically designed theory down to check unfair position. B. Mythological policy behind the antecedent. Next off. The one is use of rhetoric like blindness is the discourse rooted in ableism. This perpetuates an ableist mindset, which those who cannot see or cast out are deemed morally inferior. This is a criticism of the way that he organizes the information. The one you see and utilizes rhetoric of blindness. Stream in 11. Signifiers of disability employed in everyday discourse are pragmatically impressive. Blindness is used as rhetorical by signify lack of knowledge, as well as epistemic ignorance. The phrase determining is demeaning because it associates blindness with lack of knowledge, because the phrase standardly used in philosophy should become recognized as a cause or great concern. Also means that this is offense underneath his own framework, because it indicates that this is a signifier that imbues a particular body, particular meanings prior to your experience with them authentically, which means that it matters under your framework as well. But it's also a discursive issue, which indicates that you should not use rhetoric like that. And next off, first. The affirmative commodifies an essentialized notion of race and poverty to frame inequality, shattering class coalition, and ensuring the capitalist societal relations that build the ghettos that imprison the racialized populations become inevitable. This is an issue with the method of the one, which means when he gets up the next speech and indicates that it's not the consequences that matter, it's the method of analysis. This is what criticizes that, because it indicates that your method of viewing the real or embracing new experiences still comes from a position of privilege that is irreversible. Darter and Torres 99. Focus on race as central category of analysis, reinforce racialized identity and repression, emphasis on racial identity as an impulse for political actions, led to serious weakness, studying racial relations, continue that this is improve racial relations, bust to white schools, many times busing as problematic for identity, ignore the capitalist accumulation, classification, limited identity, is most totalizing social relations the world has ever known, emphasis on intersection of oppression, ignore capitalism, ability to homogenize the world racism, is integral to capital accumulation, is directly linked to the abusive practice of the global factory, continuous serious shortcomings, fabricating construction of race or objectified and mediated truth, ignite political support, divorce from a reality of the class struggle, and perpetuate the dangerous notion that the political and economic are separate in society, which is in the preventing class relations power to impact one indicates that that when you take these white people and you make them interact with black individuals who are in poverty, you don't actually reverse these relations. Rather, you make it you make it seem like the interaction or the disparity between the two of them is a result of differences based on experiences rather than the capital accumulation. Also, there is no such thing as the middle class and the bottom class. It is the top 1% is the bourgeoisie versus the rest of the individuals. Meaning that your utilization of this method, i.e., making middle class people or rich people go and live with the poor people, is inefficient, because the rich individuals already know that they're rich and they're fucking over poor people. But the middle class individual, but this destroys class coalition, because the middle class begins to see themselves as distinct, and the capitalist regime has cooperatively value things and look at things on reality has created a fantasy where nothing but the progression of profit matters. Everything we have come knows to fiction set up by this fantasy frame in a position of privilege by people who demand that we stop symptoms that are curing the disease of surplus. This is also going to be a weighing issue against this framework, because it indicates that it's not just because the very conception of what is real and non-real is always dictated by capital. The reality of experience is always something that is altered by the way that capital is signified. Zizek. A two-level distinction consists of every ideology. One puts on a pair, they notice that the publicity will now displays the word obey, while another urges the view to reproduce. Also, the money now bears the word this is your God. The primary method of control is that the public cannot see them for what they are. The good critical ideology, the master signifier beneath the chain of knowledge. We learn to see dictatorship in democracy. Marxists got the struggle for dictatorship. The random struggle is globally practice. Once you put on the glasses and directly the master signifier, it no longer determines you, because you see the ideological jump into the glasses, but also you are aware of the fact that it's very painful to be deprived of the ideological surplus enjoyment. The true nature of things indicates that my framework outweighs, because it means that we can only analyze the reality of nature, or the true nature of existence. If we can understand the way the power have correlated themselves to the exclusion of reality versus the way we experience the real. This is the issue with the 1AC framework. You indicate there is a real and there is not real, but you don't articulate what separates those two things. My argument is that the affective accumulation or the affective imbuement of capital with what it means to be rich or poor, what it means to be privileged or non-privileged, is the root cause of this. We think that only a practice of that begins with a materialist view of class relations has any chance of comprehending the social order and understanding the origin of exploitation and oppression. Vote negative to engage in orthodox Marxism. The time has come to affirm the historical necessity of communism. To me, 12. Capitalism as simplified class antagonism by concentrating wealth and centralizing power in the hands of few, dispossessing the masses even of everything except for labor power, even their labor power. The ruling class is not fit to rule, is incompetent to rule, is distant as enslaved within slavery, slaves are compelled to fight back. Capitalism brought to an international working class whose common conditions give them not only the need but also the power to establish society within the rules from each according to their ability, each according to need. Without revolutionary theory, they can be a revolutionary movement. We are confronted with historical crisis that demands we take Marxism theory, then we can understand the communism as independent movement of the immense majority in the interest of the immense majority and inequality forever. Now he's going to stand in the next speech and indicate that there's a premonition with the affirmative one. You don't defend consequences, which means you can't say that your method leads to my method method because this is a method debate. Do not let him go back on this now. And the second issue that you use a theory of the real and the false, i.e., something that is embedded in signification of experience in order to analyze these. I'm saying we should not look towards experience, rather dialectics, the physical effect of capitalism on both our minds and on reality, which also means that the critique comes first. Case. Representing community service programs as adversity of recruitment tactics used to mask the perpetuation of the white savior narrative. Extension club. This group has multicultural representing diversity, serves to hide the implicit hegemony. Powerful Western white volunteer goes to help those who want a better life. Host cultural nationalists, agenic readers, and neo-colonial narrative diversity will be seen throughout. This link to the entirety of the one because it indicates that your method of analysis is not something that procures a legitimate inflection with the real, but rather something that entitles individuals to come into the real with their pre-existing privilege. They already have a preconceived conception of the world. By the way, that conception is dominated by capital, which makes them immune to the new experiences, which means the experience of the real is irrelevant. Also outweighs your own evidence because this is because evidence talks about specifically volunteering, whereas your evidence comes from 1976 and also is from the organization, which means it's biased. And volunteers are white saviors who claim to rescue poor and marginalized communities while taking them over and silencing them. Turn to 1915. Outsiders are acting to improve local communities' livelihoods of community members and management. Charities were concerned with their own experiences, and they were facilitating local empowerment. Volunteers attempt to be more interested in tourism than community engagement. Charities are like imperialists, telling community members what they should and should not do. Charity work is directly employed by white saviors. The ignorant of communities, white saviors paternalistically claim to rescue suffering victims. White saviors speak over and silence the communities. They claim white saviors reproduce white supremacy discourse. This indicates that when you include people within the real, their goal is not to help things or to understand things, but rather they have a particular worldview of how nature, about how society ought to function, which indicates that they only impose that upon new societies rather than understanding their culture, state. And white saviorism only perpetuates large structures of white supremacy that dehumanize people of color and maximizes on the distinction between poor and rich that comes about through capitalism. Now, 3. White supremacy is rooted in European US imperialism. Racialized bodies are set for being negation, larger social structures that system of domination that rewards the racialized white. The rest of us are undeserving to be considered human. Indicates that there's already a preconceived concept of what it means to be good or what it means to be bad, what the real is for the individuals who are coming into these communities, and what the real is for the individuals who are outside of it, which indicates there's no such thing as a legitimate creation of experience because those experiences are already altered by the forces of capitalism. And that's what we do.
Okay. Is everyone ready for prospects?
Yeah.
Right. Why is capitalism bad?
Why is capitalism bad? By evidence indicates that the accumulation of labor and the creation of surplus is the cause of things like property.
Okay. So how do we okay, so like how do those themselves why do those themselves have this specific material effect that capitalism will affect capitalism?
What?
Why is there a material effect from these disjunctions in society that capitalism causes?
Well, this is the core of Marx's argument, right? It's the creation of surplus is only done through the denial of adequate compensation for labor. This leads to poor individuals and rich individuals because one people profits off of labor without doing the labor.
All right, let's talk about the alternative. What is a liberatory subject under the alternative?
A liberatory subject
What is
under
the
the alternative?
person doing the alternative?
Well, no, this is exactly the same as the 1AC, right? I defend a method of analyzing the world just like the 1AC does. I say that instead of looking at things through a real, non-real distinction, we should look at the material relations and effects of capitalism.
So how's that competitive with the app?
Right, a couple of arguments here. First, the Zizek evidence indicates that reality as we know it is affected by the way that capitalism has relegated these things. You indicate that there's a real created by the...
How do we know that for sure?
Okay, well the Zizek evidence is pretty good on this. It indicates that the primary method of control is that the general public cannot see them for what they are. Through the critical ideological lenses,
no, but my question is how do we know for sure? How are we 100% certain that this interpretation, this signifier of reality, is the correct one?
Well, that's because individuals who are this is where the Marxism comes in, right? Materially wealthy individuals control the reality of society. This is the core of the critique. Your evidence indicates that.
No, I'm asking, how do we know that that's the correct way? Is there any possibility of something falling outside of that?
Well, no. The argument is that capitalism is what creates the things that fall outside of that. Here, listen. Let me explain.
But capitalism has existed for many years, right? And poor people are still able to fall in love, correct?
What?
Poor people are able to fall in love.
Well, I mean, there's a whole different...
Under the system of capitalism. I'm asking you specifically.
Able to fall in love?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a bunch of arguments that would indicate that no, that's not true. The idea of love...
What?
Yeah, no, let me explain. There's a bunch of arguments that indicate the idea of loving someone and getting married is like a form of ownership.
No, but I want you to... So
I don't think
people
it's
do not feel emotions of love and...
No, they totally do, but the argument is that those emotions
okay,
are
so they
affected
felt
by
love. They felt something within the...
Yeah, but all those things are altered in doctrine or capitalism.
How?
Well, because the way that...
Or how do we know, even if it is true that capitalism is the system that defines things, why are there not things that can fall or deviate from that?
Well,
right?
I mean,
the duplicate evidence from 15 from the AC seems to say that even though these structures are real, there can still be things that fall underneath them that like they do not.
That fall outside of their realm, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the argument in the one NC is that capitalism dictates what does and does not fall inside those realms. The love between two wealthy people is always going to be different than the love between two poor people because their different experiences and their different interaction with society have altered their lives.
Okay.
That is the core of the critique. You said that real experience and non-real experience is a thing that exists. I said that it comes about because of capitalism.
Okay. Starting from now. We have 14 left. Order of case, new off theory, the ableism critique, and then the capitalism.
Wait, so one more time?
Case, or new off theory, case, ableism critique, capitalism critique.
New off theory, case, capitalism critique, discourse K?
Yep.
Are you sending stuff out?
Yes.
Okay. Is it already sent?
Yeah, I have the document. Let me send it.
Yeah.
Nuance, theory, AC, make.
Wait.
Ooh, I was about to send you the file.
No. I mean, you can do that too if you. I don't really mind.
I don't know. Ari would kind of beat the shit out of me after that. All right. Is everyone ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Interpretation. Debaters must disclose their disclosure interpretations. The violations, look at the screenshot. There's no disclosure interpretation for whether you should disclose new plain text. They can say that they're breaking this interpretation new because your interpretation is indicting whether or not I should disclose new plain text. Even if your disclosure interpretation is itself new, you should still disclose that. That's key to that's necessary for a legitimate norm setting because even if you believe your interpretation is good, you should still disclose the necessary conventions in order to abide by it. Otherwise, you are yourself violating your own interpretation, which always sounds good because you're establishing a precedent for disclosure, which the old debaters have to disclose, but we don't actually know what constitutes actual disclosure, which creates a race to the bottom. Now, theory. Counter-interpretation, the affirmative does have to disclose new plain text of this new app. Now, I need interpretations in the new app to run kills research and incentives my interpretation, incentivizes cutting new app because you get one round break and catch something off ground. Keep it in depth education because I don't further into literature, finding out always your offense on size and link my interpretation causes tens of hours of research goals while they provide 45 minutes of in-round abuse. Now, on predictability, one generic solve, you can see you read content that you're captivated like you did. No reason why you need useful turn, second turn. You know the gap 15 minutes before the round would be useless. It's impossible to cut specific prep that little time to be better. You engage in prep generics and then false confidence to destroy useful. Third, link turns wiki abuse. Your interpretation debaters incentivize the source hundreds of plans which always because you can prep new apps or old apps because you don't know what plan they're running. Also, they say they have to prep the book is specific compliance, so they couldn't even prep generics. But if it is true that you have to book a new flight, if it is true that you have to book a new flight, that means that all of your abuse is terminally non-unique because then that would mean that you'd never be able to actually prep a specific case neg in the first place. So there's no terminal abuse because the impact to the predictability. Now, our disclosure interpretation also outweighs their disclosure interpretation meta theory dictates whether or not your theory and norms are actually legitimate in the first place. Also, that it's a question of whether or not you're yeah, that's it. Now the case. Quick explanation of the framework of the reals moment incoherence that feeling from the indiscernible is that cause the reals inevitable uncontrollable experience that will interrupt at some point that's closed over. One, we can either be receptive to the real, ignored only receptivity to adequately coherent as less is got to action, otherwise they're not responsible for the worldly situations that intrude on us. That's closed over two. Now, extend closed over simultaneously inevitably fails to capture the reality on how the real inevitably overwhelms our ability to take sense of the world falling outside the world realm of intelligibility. For example, Trump's election fell outside of the realm of conventional politics and revealed the underpinnings of our political structures. That takes out the critique because they say that capitalism is what symbolizes real from not real, but we are saying that the real is still an inevitable thing. You cannot just moralize the structures of capitalism because it has the ability to do that, but rather we should recognize that the real falls outside of the zones of intelligibility that capitalism establishes, given that as inevitable. Now, also they concede arguments for they concede several evidence of the AC framework, but we'll do this specific analysis on the peaks for now. The offense is that individuals are currently ignorant of poverty and the real materialities of poverty. None of their turn cases, which only the affirmative results are. Vast 13 evidence indicates that Vista, as envisioned in 1969, is uniquely key, which also no links us from their case turn because none of this argument is actually indexed to Vista as it was in the past, but rather is talking about current volunteer programs. Also, none of these case turns are actually relevant because they don't question whether or not they might be bad consequences. Every confrontation with the real has the potential to produce bad consequences, but since in confronting a real it succeeds the symbolic, since we have a plan that shows it will work, we don't have a plan that shows it will work out. The only chance of a true moment of ethics and politics is a confrontation with the real. Knife demands to do it anyways, which means in the face of uncertainty of outcome, which means the turns still have no terminal impact. Now the ableism, now the right to create one signifier just that this argument just assumes that certain signifiers of ableism are legitimate in themselves, but our argument that the real will always interrupt them. Second, no alternative, which means there's no unique to this argument. Second, third is that this argument links to the critique. Obviously, a Marxist alternative would assume that there's some able-bodied subject who can actually envision the alternative, which means they're only the affirmative that actually solve because they understand how realities cannot can fracture that. Now the critique one they concede the law rule two evidence which says radical alternatives absent the affirmative tail, which justifies permutation due to the affirmative and the alternative only the victim philosophy is the reason why the act is truly a revolutionary politics, which means the firm is key to all that all solvency. Also, second term, do the afternoon start victimhood, or the firm do the afternoon start victimhood. The alternative relies on notion humanity phase of oppression. That's the only possible to do the after method of finding humanity despite this is real subjugate. So that's law. Well, third, the third is signification. Just that even if capitalism is the correct norm of signification, it still says to recognize how the real can always interrupt us, which only the affirmative takes recognition. Also, the affirmative link turns this because it forces people to live in poverty, which is better understanding of the proletariat.
I have 140. Let me just set the timer.
You don't have 140.
Oh wait, you have 140. Let me see. How much do I have?
You have 115.
Oh yeah. Did you redrop the debater at the bottom of this 1 hour shell?
I said that it caused all the use. It like basically hijacks your.
Can you win off of this shell if you don't redrop the debater on it?
Uh,
It seems to me that if I didn't disclose, you disclose the strictest terminal defense.
wait, no, because I disclosed my disclosure interpretation.
No, I don't understand. Why is there a drop the debater impact on the shell that you just read?
Because it's
Super simple question.
Well, wait, what do you mean? I've often linking back to an interpretation. It's a weird question.
Oh, okay.
I'm also
fine,
winning
I
a
guess.
counter interpretation on your original disclosure
Yep.
shell for why my specific instance, why you don't need to disclose a new plan app, right?
Okay, that's fine.
That like doesn't make any sense.
What was your first argument on your discourse, K?
The signifier I just had, it says that there are certain signifiers that verify whether or not a certain like lingo is actually ableist, right? But the affirmative only recognizes how there can always be certain discourses that fall outside the realms of those defining features of intelligibility, which means the AC is always.
Okay, can you say the N-word for me real quick?
What?
Can you say the N-word for me? It's possible for signifiers to avoid their consequences.
No, dude, I don't think you understand what the app is talking about. That's not the conclusion of my argument.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
So the order is going to be the 1AR shell very, very briefly, then the discourse critique, then the cap K.
Alright, so discourse critique.
No, briefly on your new shell, then the discourse K, then the cap K, and then case.
Alright.
I'm gonna get stuff. Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay. No impact thing shall later be to 1 year. There's no indication of why you should drop the beta for me on this. You also don't get to cross-apply my own words before I drop the debate applies for me, because that is the reason why you should drop him for negative use and abuse are not equivocal, which means there's no way that you can articulate the same drop debate argument. Also, you said co-op's offense. There's no reason why you should give a shit about him co-opting the offense. There's no terminal impact to this argument. There's no indication that he can co-opt the 1 AR shell and win off of it because he doesn't drop the debate, or he doesn't need impact back to education and fairness. He attempts to link term mind, that makes this 1 AR shell function just a counter interpretation because it's not come with its own framing mechanism or its own impact, which means you don't evaluate it. It also means that the turn is relevant because even if you win offense on theory, there's no reason why you should win because you don't indicate that you should win for winning theory. So do not let him collapse this in the 2 AR because it's incredibly unclear as to whether or not it's a voting issue for him. I even asked him cross-examination if he made drop the debate claims, and he said that he did not just co-opted offense. It doesn't matter if you co-opt offense, you don't have a drop the debate about justification, which means that your shell goes away. Now let's go to the discourse K. First, you make a couple of arguments here and they're all awful. First, go to the signification. Because you indicated that there's something signifiers that have new interpretations and new meanings outside of the normative discourse. I asked you in cross-examination to say the N-word, and you say no. That is because there's still a normative force that is applied to the categorization of the words. Even if psychoanalytic theory of language indicates that certain signifiers can re-articulate their meaning in certain situations, you still concede that in the broader context, or more specifically, the context we're in right now, as the discourse in this round continues, that there's still normative back to using particular language, means that your signification argument goes away. Now, second, you indicate that this link also links back to my own Marxism critique. No, Marxism is a critique of the way that laborers can modify, which means it criticizes the way that disabled people are seen as less valuable because of their lesser ability to contribute to the labor economy, which means that I linked to this argument because it's only a Marxist lens can view labor as something that one has within their own potentiality rather than an objective lens, which beats back this other argument. And third, you say no, the alt is to down you for being ableist. It is that fucking simple. There's no articulation alternative that means that we resolve your issue. Rather, the argument is that you did something problematic in round and you should lose. This is also proof. Do not let him extend more psychoanalytic theory bullshit that indicates that he does not link into this, because even if you can re-articulate the meaning of signifiers, you can see that in this round right now, as a particular meaning that you cannot escape, which is proven by the fact that you went to the N-word cross-examination. Go to the capitalism critique. Yeah. You make a couple permutations here. This is going to be, as an overview of all your permutations, you can see this is a method and that you have no advocacy proper. Rather, you don't garner offense off your advocacy between permutation. Normally, a permutation will trigger terminal defense off of the critique and only one to see, but you can see that it's literally irrelevant as to who co-opts defense because neither of our case positions are about the effects or the consequences. It's not an offense-based system, it's a method-based system using this multiple the cross-ex in both cross-examinations and in flashback, which indicates do not let him turn back on this to be like permutation resolves everything, because you can see this is a methods debate. This is about how we both analyze the social order and come to particular conclusions. We take out all your permutations because it indicates it's literally impossible to do both because we both articulate different conceptions of what reality looks like. Go to the critique proper first. You have no offense onto the critique, and you conceded the role of the ballot. It is game fucking over. You conceded that that only the role of the ballot analyzes the way that the real has been constructed and created by the distinctions of capitalism, or that capital is actively imbued with meanings and significations. You concede that this creates a distinction between the poor and the non-poor, which articulates a differentiation in terms of how individuals ought to react to each other. You concede that this creates a pre-existing notion of privilege when individuals come into particular spaces and they do not cultivate new experiences because capitalism has already adopted the way they do these things. Now you're going to get up the next experience that we can still cultivate these experiences because experiences can still be created within capitalism. But you can see my argument, which is I talk about whether or not they get created, but the way that capitalism coerces these particular worldviews, which means that you've also conceded like a ton of arguments as to why my framework lexically comes before, well, not lexically, but theoretically comes before your role of the because it indicates the only way that we can understand the differentiation between the real and the non-real is through understanding the way that capitalism formulates these things. Now you've also conceded complete solvency on the alternative, which is that we, instead of viewing things through a psychoanalytic theory, or theory of signification, or theory of the real and non-real, we should view things through a theory of orthodox Marxism, a materialist analysis of the way that capitalism has fractured and put together the way that we analyze the world, and the way that we analyze the commodification qualification of labor. You can see this is distinct from the 1AC because you indicate that we should utilize what experience is formulated, i.e. the distinction between real experience and non-real experience in order to analyze things that the 1AC does not give a shit about experiences. It says we need to analyze the material articulations of how capitalism creates those experiences in the first place. One, that means by that means the critique comes back to the power. Two, you take out all your permutations because that's the method debate. And third, it means that only I can resolve the tension that creates your issues in the first place. The only reason that we have rich people and poor people, the only reason we have a necessity for competition with the real in the first place is because capitalism has created those distinctions. These are all arguments that you've conceded. It is literally game over. Let's go to the AC. First, you misunderstood the articulation of the terms. You used this would critique the consequential effects of your terms. No, this was the criticism of the way that your method will work in the real world as a methodology, not necessarily an implementation. Let me explain. First, the first piece of evidence indicates that when individuals go into the real world to experience the real with the pre-existing mindset that exists in the real world right now, they have a white savior complex which articulates themselves as the saviors of those individuals. Which means, one, your method is too abstract. It looks at this is also another link to the Marxist critique. You indicate that the real and the non-real function in a particular way. My argument is that those things are altered by the views of colonialism in the real world when your method is articulated, which means it's not about consequentialism but whether your method functions in reality. You can see this for the white savior complex where white individuals see themselves as the saviors of these communities, and you also can see that they come into those experiences with pre-existing privileges, which is terminal defense to the one you see because it indicates that you do not cultivate and experience the real. Individuals who go to these places, they will be like, oh man, life here sure sucks, and they'll go back to their existence. You also can see the Hernandez evidence, which is empirical evidence. The only argument you have that's defensive to this is the indication that this talks about a different program. It doesn't matter if it talks about a different program. It is a class analysis of how different social groups operate in relation to each other. So, which means that actually my arguments outweigh on specificity because they talk about the phenomenology, whereas your arguments only talk about the implication of the plan. Round breaks down incredibly simply. The work on the discourse critique is functionally conceded. He concedes so many impacts. He concedes the relevance of the round. His signification decide goes away because he concedes that even if signification is true in the abstract, in this room there are certain practices that ought to be academically discouraged. This means that you vote on the discourse case because he used ableist language. He didn't even contest the link, which means it's game over in that. He also concedes the usage of the critique and its articulation as an analysis of materialism rather than his, which is a methods debate. There's no such thing as a permutation of methods debate because we both articulate different understandings of how the world operates. Even if you don't vote for me there, you can vote off a risk of offense in AC because he concedes terminal defense and indicates his method will fail, and he concedes offensive terms which indicates that his method, when applied to the real world, creates a savior complex. Game over.
A minute and 15. The race, no.
140.
140.
You're ready to go, man. Get in there.
Okay. It'll be the theory cell, the one you are. And if there's time, it'll be like the link turn on the mark skit. Or the two turn. Whatever. Is everyone ready? Alright. Oh, there are two layers in this debate. There's the theory debate, there's the substance debate. The true and art is absolutely zero weighing for which one actually comes first, i.e. whether or not the impacts of the critique come first or whether or not the impacts of the theory shall come first. You should err heavily on the weighing that was done in the 1NC, i.e. their fairness voted that they justify for why the judge is inevitably constrained by fairness, which means that obviously fairness is itself a constraint on whether or not you can vote on the discourse game, which means it functionally comes as the highest layer. Now at this point, I won that fairness is obviously the biggest impact, especially since the 1NC does all this working now. If I just won that my theory interpretation has the strongest internal impact of fairness, and that insofar as you
you have zero counter interpretation back to my interpretation. There's 100% offense back to a fairness voter, which means that I'm winning offense back to the highest layer, even if I lose comparative offense on the world about debate. Now, the framing issue on the theory debate is that he just says that I have absolutely zero link to the voter because the voter is negative specific. I dare you to read the voter. It is not negative specific in any way ever. The 8 point for drop the debater says that in order to dropping the debater is necessary to compensate for a time which was also kind of this interpretation because I obviously lost time reading my original interpretation. He also, his fairness voter is generic and also competing interpretations in the RBI, which means that obviously this voter is a general voter and is the highest impact in the debate. I.e., you as a judge have to focus on fairness. And if you want to vote for the better debater, you need to make sure that you vote in accordance with fairness. Now it will win my interpretation. The framing issue on the interpretation is the debate and counter interpretation debate is very simple. I have been very simple. The abuse story is that your interpretation creates a double bind, it creates a double standard in which norms are never created, and that debaters will always be able to read different kinds of disclosure interpretations, and we do not actually in which we do not actually understand what constitutes the conventions of disclosure. They conceded that creates a race to the bottom in which everyone will just be violating disclosure interpretations, and we will actually never be able to debate fairly engaged, which impacts both in norm setting and to fairness, which means that it's not solely contingent on co-opting your one error shell, but it also has its own independent impacts back to fairness. Now, his argument says that this one error interpretation is just a counter interpretation to the original interpretation. No, he has conceded that this is a meta theory interpretation, i.e., is indicting the way that you read your original interpretation, i.e., you should disclose that original interpretation, otherwise you should lose, which means that you should drop the debater. In this specific instance, he says that co-ops, there's no drop of the debater. No, I've already done this analysis for why the debater is not overly generic. And he says that just co-ops of the one error shell.
I respond to all of his arguments. He didn't read a counter interpretation. He conceded an offensive theory interpretation. I have offense. It links back to a fairness voter. It links back to norm setting. He conceded norm setting comes first and outweighs on scope. There's zero weighing done between roll of the ballot offense on the substance debate and zero weighing done on whether discourse comes first. You should heavily err affirmative on the substance debate over fairness, especially since his argument very explicitly says that fairness unconditionally constrains your ability to make a decision, regardless of what the roll of the ballot is. I cannot spell this debate in much clearer terms than that. I have one offensive theory interpretation and it goes back to it. For that.
The finals of the Valley Mid-American Cup. The decision is a 3-0 for the affirmative from Lake Highland.
I thought the 2AR characterized it pretty well. The voter is not only for one side, it's bidirectional, which means that there's prior voting that was there. He doesn't need to extend it if he's conceding that fairness is the voter. The meta theory comes first argument was made in 1AR when the shell was originally made. There's not a counter interp, he's winning offense. There's no argument about why discourse came before that. It's pretty explicit in the original shell that you're not both a better trader.
Yeah.
That was a really pessimistic. If there was an argument about why discourse
Yeah.
theory, then or if you were right about the direct